What does Detroit mean to you?
Well, I've been there my whole life. My family is so intertwined with Detroit that it's almost impossible to separate them. I mean, the Ford Freeway goes right through Detroit. The Henry Ford Hospital is there.
Ford Field.
Ford Field, Detroit Institute of Arts, which was, my grandparents and great-grandparents were enormously influential in its founding. I mean, you could go on and on down the list, and I'm old enough to remember the riots. So I was there when that happened, and almost overnight, everything that I did in my life shifted from the city to the suburbs. My doctor, my dentist, where I bought my clothes.
50 years ago.
Yeah, everything just shifted. And Detroit was on a long-term decay.
And yet you're so proud of where you're from.
Well, yeah, and I remember almost 20 years ago when I was negotiating to build Ford Field downtown, I was called up by one of the most prominent business people in Detroit, and he said to me, if you build this stadium in downtown Detroit, it'll be the biggest mistake you'll ever make. Your fans won't follow you. They'll be afraid. They won't want to park their cars. There's nothing for them to do pre and post game, and all the money is in the suburbs. And for the first couple of years, it was a little like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's part of the cornerstone of the rebuilding of Detroit.
Ford is announcing that it is going to do more to that effect.
Yes.
And this has to do with the Michigan Central Station. This is a long abandoned, iconic train station in the heart of Detroit that for many, unfortunately, since it was sort of abandoned in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Has become this icon of ruin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not okay with that.
I hated that. I remember the train station when it was vibrant and it was an awesome place. Every time a national publication would do an article on the decay of Detroit,
they'd show it.
The photo was always of the train station. Every time I'd see that, it was like a knife through my heart. So to be able to now come back to Detroit and to completely renovate the train station and make it awesome again, to me, I can't think of anything I'd rather do. Even now, in its decayed state, walking around, the grandeur is unmistakable. And so we're going to restore all of that, make that all open to the public, have restaurants and retail and bars and coffee shops. That's what the ground floor will be. Then we'll have offices above. And for us, it's really important because we're building a downtown campus around autonomous vehicles and electrification.
Are you bullish on Detroit? That's sort of the brain drain that has happened. You know, many young people who have left because they don't see the opportunity there that they see in San Francisco or New York. Is that turning? Are you bullish on the days ahead?
I'm actually really bullish, and it took me a while to get there. I was always hopeful, but there's a difference between hopeful and bullish.
A big one.
Yeah, I'm bullish now. Why? Because it's real. And actually, when we go recruit young people now, even 5, 6 years ago, we'd have to sell them everything but Detroit about coming to work at Ford. Now, Detroit is the magnet.
I wonder, from an outside perspective, it seems to me like a lot of that money that's flowing into these tech jobs, et cetera, is flowing to young, often white millennials. And that the poorest neighborhoods of Detroit, the predominantly black neighborhoods, are not getting the help needed. Is that a fair read?
I think it is fair, and I think everybody in the business community is acutely aware of not leaving the neighborhoods behind. But I think rebuilding the tax base of the city and also the neighborhoods, but to do any of that takes money. And so, with companies moving downtown like they are, startups happening all over, which is really cool to see, the tax base is starting to get rebuilt.